My company called it a strategic restructuring. I called it what it was. They discovered which of us was right on a Thursday morning at 7:22 when 43 active construction projects across 6 states ground to a halt, not because of weather, not because of a labor dispute, but because of a single line I had written into my employment contract 22 years ago. My name is Robert Calloway. I am 58 years old, and I am about to tell you how I made a 34-year-old MBA cry in a parking garage. But let's back up. I joined Harmon & Associates straight out of grad school. Civil engineering, structural focus. My specialty, bridge design, load calculations, foundation analysis, the math that keeps 100,000 people in a river safe. The firm had 11 employees when I arrived. By the time Marcus Webb walked through the door, we had 260. Most of what we built, I either designed or supervised. Caldwell Overpass, Route 9 Connector, Millerton Pedestrian Bridge, which won a state design award in 2019. My work stretched from Maine to Florida. I was never the flashiest person in the office. Engineering doesn't reward flash, it rewards precision. You get the numbers right, or the structure fails. That's the whole job. Marcus Webb did not understand this. He had a master's in business administration from a school with a good football team, a father on the board of directors, and the unshakable confidence of someone who had never been told he was wrong. He arrived as Vice President of Engineering Operations 18 months ago. Operations, not engineering. That word did a lot of work in that title. Within 60 days, he reorganized project management workflows, introduced a new billing software nobody asked for, and started holding mandatory 15-minute stand-up meetings every Monday that achieved nothing except making people late to their actual work. He called it agile methodology. I called it theater. He learned my name about 4 months in, not because he sought me out, but because Gerald, the CEO, mentioned me during a quarterly review. Robert's the one who holds our PE of record certifications on the active infrastructure portfolio, Gerald said. Essentially the legal spine of our engineering division. Marcus nodded like he understood. He did not. I watched him over the next year. The way he moved through the office, spoke to junior engineers as if they were spreadsheet inputs, presented in board meetings using language clearly pulled from industry reports, never touching a design himself. He reminded me of a substitute teacher who had convinced himself he was the principal. In March, he called me into his corner office, Gerald's old one, before Gerald moved upstairs. Robert, sit down. Not a question. He was already on his laptop. I've been doing a deep dive on resource allocation, and I want to talk about your role. Your compensation is at the top of the salary band, significantly above market for a non-client-facing position. We think we can get that function covered through a third-party certification partner more flexible, more cost-effective. I looked at him for a moment. Outsourcing the licensed professional engineer of record function to a contracting firm? Exactly. The technical details would be yours, he said. I kept my voice even. Every active project we have is permitted under my PE license number. You cannot transfer that to a vendor. That's not how licensure works, he blinked. The legal team is looking at talk to Sandra, I interrupted. Sandra Cho was our general counsel. Sharp, thorough, and zero patience for problems that could have been avoided by reading the relevant statute. Before you do anything else, talk to Sandra. He nodded, leaned back, like he was considering my input generously. I walked back to my desk, past framed photos of bridges I designed, past my engineering license, past the cabinet holding 22 years of stamped drawings. Something settled in me, not anger. Something colder, clearer than anger. The recognition that this was actually happening, that someone handed authority, genuinely believed engineering was a procurement problem. That evening, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in 4 years. My employment contract, 31 pages. On page 27, section 14, Addendum B, a paragraph I had quietly negotiated back in 2002 when the firm had almost been acquired by a national chain, and the new owners suggested I wasn't essential personnel. It read in part, the designated licensed professional engineer of record, as named in Addendum B1 and registered with applicable state engineering boards, shall maintain active certified employment status with the firm for the duration of any project, in which said engineer's license number appears on submitted. Permit documentation. In the event of termination, resignation, or removal from compensated status for any period exceeding 72 hours, The firm shall be obligated to notify all relevant state engineering boards of the change in PE of record status, at which point all affected project permits shall be subject to mandatory suspension pending appointment and approval of a replacement licensed engineer. Gerald Sr., the CEO's father, had waved it through without reading it. Fine, whatever you need. I read it again slowly. Then I emailed Sandra. Subject, question on licensure continuity, Section 14, Addendum B, 4 sentences. I told her I'd heard mention of a potential restructuring of the PE of record function and wanted to make sure she was aware of the relevant contract language before any decisions were finalized. Attached the full agreement, sent it at 9:17 p.m. Sandra was at my desk at 8:05 the next morning. She didn't sit. Robert, this contract? Yes. Marcus hasn't read it, I said. She assumed a chair, lowered her voice. Walk me through the exposure. I opened my laptop, pulled up the active project portfolio. 43 projects across 6 states, bridges, overpasses, a pedestrian walkway system for a city redevelopment project, 2 highway ramps in Georgia, a culvert replacement program in Pennsylvania halfway through construction, every single one permitted under my license. If I am removed from active employed status, the contract requires notification to the state boards. The boards will suspend the permits. Construction stops. All 43 jobs, some mid-pour. She was quiet. Mid-pour, as in they've already started setting concrete. Yes. And the timeline to replace you? To find a licensed PE willing to assume record responsibility for 43 active projects they didn't design, credential them with 6 state boards, then have the boards review the permit transfers? Minimum 90 days, probably closer to 6 months. Some states have backlogs. Sandra closed her eyes for 2 seconds, then opened them. How long have you been sitting on this? I negotiated it in 2002. Does anyone else know? I mentioned it to Marcus yesterday, told him to talk to you. She stood. I need to brief Gerald. I knew. I figured she would. She left. I poured coffee, returned to my work, load calculations for a retaining wall in North Carolina. Numbers are numbers. Office politics don't care. 2 days passed. No word from Marcus. I noticed he stopped walking through the engineering department, stopped scheduling Monday stand-ups. His assistant canceled 3 meetings. On Thursday, I arrived, keycard still worked, email still active, everything normal on the surface. But tension hung in the building, the kind that settles in when the top knows something is wrong and hasn't figured out how to say it yet. I had a call from a headhunter I'd spoken to 6 months prior. I returned it, listened to the offer. Regional engineering director position with a competitor. Good salary, good benefits, interesting portfolio. I need a few weeks, I said. Understood. The role is yours if you want it. That evening, I sat on my porch. My daughter Claire was home for spring break, 19 years old, studying architecture at State. She was at the kitchen table, pencil behind her ear, working on a studio project. I could see her through the sliding glass door. Her tuition was one thing, her graduate school because she was going. No question that kid was going was another. I had counted on my year-end bonus for that fund. 22 years never missed. I thought about Marcus saying non-client facing, as if the bridges I designed weren't facing anyone, as if the structures holding up 40 miles of highway weren't serving every person driving across them. I thought about my ex-wife, who years ago told me I gave too much to the firm, that I'd never be fully seen there. I disagreed then. I went inside, made dinner, helped Claire with her structural calculations, mixed-use building for her studio. The load path analysis gave her trouble. We worked through it for an hour. She got it. She always got it eventually. You're kind of a genius, Dad, she said, exasperated in that affectionate way only children can. I'm a civil engineer, I said. Mostly just math. She rolled her eyes. Same thing. I went to bed thinking about the contract clause, about drafting it for exactly this reason, about Marcus Webb being handed a loaded weapon and pointing it at the person holding the safety. The termination notice arrived on a Tuesday. 4-week severance, standard language. Position eliminated as part of strategic restructuring. Marcus's signature at the bottom. Gerald's initials in the corner. I read it once, set it on my desk, picked up the phone and called Sandra. I got the notice, I said. A pause. Robert, I want you to know I advised against this strongly on multiple occasions. I know, I said. Marcus convinced Gerald the legal risk was manageable, that he could have a replacement PE credentialed within the transition window. He can't. I know he can't. Yes, the contract requires notification to the state boards within 72 hours of your removal from compensated status. Yes, I won't interfere with that process, but I won't facilitate a workaround either, I said. She paused. Do you have representation? My attorney will send over contact information this afternoon. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning out my desk methodically. Every personal item, my framed engineering license, the photo of the Caldwell overpass ribbon cutting, a coffee mug my daughter gave me, world's okayest structural engineer. She bought it ironically, which meant she understood the joke, which meant I'd raised her right. I did not take any firm files, did not copy project documents. My personal work logs, yes. The notebook with my methodology notes, yes. Everything else stayed. It deactivated my credentials at 5 p.m. I turned in my keycard, waved to Denise, the receptionist who had been there longer than I had. Take care of yourself, Robert, she said. Always, I said. You too. 72 hours is 3 days. The notification requirement activated automatically. Sandra had actually set up a compliance calendar when I first flagged the contract, back when she was trying to prevent what was now happening. Professional to the end, she sent the notifications to all 6 state engineering boards on Thursday evening. Friday morning, I went fishing. I have a spot 40 minutes from home. Small lake, quiet. My father took me there as a kid. I still use his rod. The fishing isn't always great. That's not the point. I sat for 4 hours, thought about nothing in particular. My phone had 12 missed calls by noon. I didn't check who from. I had a rough idea. Drove home, showered, made a sandwich, then listened to the voicemails. Georgia Department of Transportation, notifying Harmon and Associates that permit number GA2244BR had been flagged for PE of record status change under mandatory review. Effective immediately. All active construction activities should cease pending resolution. Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Similar message. 2 projects, North Carolina. 1 mid-construction retaining wall. Particularly unhappy because of tight municipal timelines. Maryland, Virginia, Florida. 7 voicemails from state agencies. The 8th, Sandra. She sounded tired but not surprised. Robert, call me when you can. Not to negotiate, just to confirm you received this. I called her back. Marcus is... She stopped. Gerald wants a meeting tomorrow morning. Will your attorney be present? Marcus is not in the room. Of course. Marcus is not in the room? I asked. Not a preference, I'll communicate that. Saturday morning, Gerald's office, Realwood desk. Photos of every major project in 40 years. Gerald himself, 64, second generation. He stood when I came in, extended his hand. We had known each other long enough. My attorney James Whitfield sat to my left. 60, compact, precise. Sandra across the table. 2 other board members. Marcus was not there. Gerald looked at the papers in front of him. Robert, I want to start by saying I understand the position we've put you in, and I don't think this was handled. I interrupted. I've had a long career. Let's talk about what this actually costs. He nodded. Respected that. James slid a document across the table. 3 pages. Clean. Drafted the week before the termination notice. Not because I knew it was coming, but because I had known it was possible since March. Preparation isn't paranoia, it's engineering. Full payment of withheld severance at contractual terms, not the modified offer. James continued, compensation for breach of PE of record continuity obligations as defined in Section 14. That figure accounts for regulatory notification triggered by the firm, not me. One board member leaned forward. The notification requirement was contractual, Sandra added quietly. Once a PE of record status changes, the firm has a statutory obligation to inform the relevant boards. Marcus's belief that we could manage a quiet internal transition was incorrect. I documented that in my memo 6 weeks ago. She slid her own memo across the table. Do not proceed with restructuring until PE of record continuity is resolved. Gerald read it, set it down, jaw doing something careful. How long are we looking at? He asked. To get operations back online, to credential a replacement PE across 43 active projects and 6 state boards, James said. Sandra estimated 90 to 180 days. Optimistic. North Carolina has a backlog. Georgia's board meets quarterly. Probably 8 months on the outside. And mid-construction projects? North Carolina is critical, I said. Retaining wall in Mecklenburg County. First section poured. If they stop now, and the project sits for 8 months. Potential structural integrity questions on the poured section. Might have to demo and start over. That's the client's problem, but also your liability. Board member who had pushed back earlier went quiet. What are we talking about? Gerald asked. James pointed to the bottom line. $890,000. Base severance owed. Breach penalty per addendum B. And consulting retainer. To facilitate PE transition on a timeline that works. I would assist with credentialing, documentation, and remain available for state board inquiries. My involvement gets them back online in 60 days instead of 8 months. Silence. Gerald looked at Sandra. She didn't look away. That's leverage, Gerald said, naming it, not accusing. I said, it's a contract. One negotiated in good faith 22 years ago. On file in your legal department the whole time Marcus planned the restructuring. Sandra tried to get him to read it. The leverage existed before any of this. The only change, someone decided I was a line item. Gerald looked at his hands, then the window, then back at me. Was there any version where you didn't use it? I thought honestly. Yes, if you came directly, told me you needed to reduce costs, asked what options existed. Early retirement package, consulting transition, structured handoff. Marcus said it wasn't personal. Then he removed me from the org chart without talking. That's not restructuring. That's someone who didn't think I mattered enough to have a conversation. Gerald absorbed that. Where is Marcus? He asked the room. I asked him not be here, Sandra said. I know. I mean, where is he now? His office, I assume. Gerald nodded slowly. I need the room a few minutes. James and I stepped out, poured water. They'll accept, James said. I know. You could have pushed for more. I know that too. Gerald looked at me. Why didn't you? I thought about it. Because $890,000 is what they owe. More would be punishment. I'm not interested in punishment. I just wanted them to understand I wasn't disposable. We returned 20 minutes later. Gerald's desk was clear. The 2 board members had left. Sandra remained. We'll accept the terms, Gerald said. Wire transfer Monday, full amount. He looked up. Robert, I want to say something, and I want you to know I mean it. I waited. I should have read the contract myself. When Marcus brought this plan to me, I should have gone back to the original agreement. I didn't. That's on me. I nodded once. Appreciate that, James added. The written acknowledgement is also in the terms. Yes, Sandra said. They'd draft it for the next all-staff meeting. Gerald would deliver it personally. We shook hands. I gathered my coat. At the door, I turned back. Gerald, whoever you bring in as the replacement PE, give them the same protections I had. Make sure their name is in the contract. First page, not page 27. Not for their sake. For yours. He nodded. Sandra's already drafting it, I said, looking at her. She allowed a small nod. I left. The drive home was quiet. Radio off. Windows cracked. Late spring air. The kind that doesn't care what just happened, which is exactly what you need sometimes. Claire was still asleep when I got home. She had earned the sleep. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and looked at my engineering license across from me. Robert Calloway, PE. Earned through 4 years of exams, field experience, late nights, until I understood the problems. Not just got close enough. On Monday, the wire cleared at 11:14 a.m. My phone pinged. $890,000. I sat for a moment. Then I opened my laptop and made 3 transfers. A significant piece to Claire's education fund. Graduate school was no longer a financial question, just a matter of program choice. A portion to retirement, which was now a near-term option instead of distant. And a check to the youth engineering camp I'd volunteered at for a decade. They'd been trying to raise money for new equipment for 2 years. I'd meant to give more for just as long. That afternoon, Sandra sent a photo. The all-staff presentation slide on the big screen, recognizing Robert Calloway, PE, 22 years of engineering excellence. Below it, Caldwell Overpass, Route 9, Millerton Pedestrian Bridge, the North Carolina Project, 14 others by name, and a line at the bottom, Principal Engineer of Record, the structural foundation of the firm's infrastructure portfolio. Gerald read every word. Marcus sat in the back row. I didn't respond to that part. I just texted Sandra, "Thank you for everything." She replied, "I put it in writing this time. First page, bold." That evening, Claire found me on the porch. She had seen the acknowledgement slide. Somehow, Sandra had sent it to firm-wide email, which still included my address until it caught up. "Dad," she said, sitting next to me. What happened? Long story. Mom said, "You got a settlement." I did. She looked at the yard. Was it bad working there? I thought carefully. The work wasn't bad. The work was good. I liked the work. Someone decided the work didn't have a person attached to it. That was bad. She was quiet for a moment. And then you made them understand it did. Something like that. How? I read the contract. She laughed. Single short laugh, then serious. Dad, are you okay? I thought about that. The honest answer. Yeah, I think I actually am. She leaned over, head on my shoulder for a moment, then sat back up. She's 22, and there are limits. Good. We sat there for a while. The dog returned from the fence. Evening cooled. What are you going to do now? She asked. I'm going back in on Wednesday. Consulting. Help them transition the PE of record function to someone capable. Train the replacement properly. Then, once that's done, probably take that other offer. Regional director role. More money. More autonomy. Less Marcus. She nodded. Seriously? Sounds like a good trade. I consulted for 61 days. Came in Tuesdays and Thursdays. Worked directly with the replacement PE. Helen Marsh. 50 sharp. Previously at a state transportation department for a decade. She knew what she was doing. I made sure the state boards met her in person where possible. Permit transfers went smoothly. I left documentation more thorough than the firm ever required because I wanted Helen to have everything she needed. Marcus was reassigned before I finished. New title: Director of Strategic Initiatives. Office on a different floor. No direct reports. Gerald handled it quietly. Public firing avoided. I had nothing to say. On my last consulting day, Helen walked me to the lobby. Anything I should know? She asked about the work, the projects, the firm. I thought, they're decent people? Most of them. Just forgot for a while that buildings stand because of engineers, not presentations. I paused. Don't let them forget again. She nodded. Already have it in writing. I drove to Claire's campus. She was in her studio, designing a small transit hub, timber frame, adaptive structure. I found one error in her load calculations. Fixed it in 8 minutes. You're insufferable, she said fondly. You're going to be a great engineer, I said. Architect, one of the good ones, I added. She rolled her eyes but smiled. The thing about building bridges, buildings, systems, careers, is that the work doesn't disappear when you leave the room. The Caldwell Overpass carries 30,000 vehicles a day. The Route 9 connector has been in service for 11 years. Somewhere in North Carolina, a retaining wall holds back a hillside in the rain. My name isn't on a sign anywhere. That was never the point. The point was the work was real, and it required someone who understood it. For 22 years, I was that person. I knew my value before anyone else did. I just made sure it was written down somewhere they couldn't ignore. Some call it leverage. Some call it revenge. I call it engineering. You account for every load. You don't build without understanding what holds the weight. And you always document your work. The new boat sits in my driveway, waiting for spring. Nothing fancy. 16-foot, reliable outboard motor. Good for the lake where my father took me. Claire says she wants to come fishing sometime. I told her she'd have to put her phone down. She said she would. We'll see. But I'm looking forward to it.